Perfect. Okay. So, welcome back to the CEO podcast, where we dive into the stories behind the leadership in the cannabis industry, the visionaries, the risk takers, and the purpose driven entrepreneurs who are changing the game. I'm your host, Paul Garducki, and today I'm sitting with Jackson Rund, uh, a student building inside and outside the classroom, majoring in cannabis business and cannabis science. Did I get that right?
Cannabis chemistry, but yes.
Thank you. Okay. Let's see. So, we're going to go beyond business today, exploring the core four areas that define who we are: body, being, balance, and business. Jackson, welcome to the show. And by the way, do
Yeah,
you go by Jackson or Jack?
Jackson for the most part, and thanks for having me on, Paul.
No, no problem. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. We actually just started the first day of Thanksgiving break, and I'll be going home tomorrow for Minnesota to spend some time with family there.
Nice. Very nice. I'm here in California myself, so I understand. It's that time of the year.
Yep.
All righty. So let's start with your journey. Before the brand, before the business, who are you and how did you end up in the cannabis space?
Yeah, so it's been a wild ride. I first got introduced to cannabis in high school, mainly through just experimental, but then I had some nerve damage in my back when playing football, and so I started going to a chiropractor, and they had just recommended medical cannabis, and so I gave it a try, and then I ended up enjoying it a lot, and then realized that the price in Minnesota was really unachievable for what my medical needs were. So I started growing, and then the growing led to a little bit of selling as well. And then I actually was raided when I was 17. My dad's house was raided by the police, and I was facing roughly 10 years in prison at the time. And so fast forward 12 months, there was some issues in the raid and all my charges were dropped, thankfully. And then a week later, I left for college and came here. And it's been a wild ride here as well, to say the least. We've these programs have really e- equipped me to step into different roles for networking and just speaking in more of an advocacy role for youth, but also for just medical users and people who are in states where it's illegal. And it's been really nice. And I'll be graduating here in the spring. Not really sure what the next steps look like, but I'm really grateful to be here and free today.
Mhm. I don't blame you. Having to deal with criminal charges is not a good thing. Hey, but what can you do? Let's
Yeah.
see. So, what, I mean, you already answered this, but let me ask again. What first inspired you to get involved in the cannabis industry?
Yeah, so my first introduction to just general plant medicine was actually just scrolling through Instagram and seeing studies done by the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies, MAPS, and seeing their studies on MDMA kind of inspired me to explore more psychedelic medicine as a whole. And then I learned a lot more about the medical uses of cannabis, and I saw that really the cannabis industry was just getting started as I was leaving high school, and I figured it would be advantageous to take a risk and dive more into my education of the plan and the industry, and then hopefully after college get into it. And so that's what's brought me here today for the most part, and I'm excited to get into the industry in more of a hands-on role in a few months.
Excellent, excellent. Let's see. And so, what do you wish more people understood about this industry and your role in it?
That's a good question. I think people, well, I guess the overall population, I would really appreciate if the notion of like hemp-derived delta 9 versus cannabis-derived delta 9 was just kind of dropped, and we like accepted it as the chemical compound that it is, which is delta 9 THC. And not to get too deep into the chemistry of it, there's some differences in conversions, and so you're not exactly getting the same product, but for the most part you are. And when you're isolating it, you are too. And so I think the hemp versus cannabis notion is something I wish people would kind of open their eyes to and realize it's the same plant. But as far as my role in the cannabis industry, I think people need to listen to youth constituents a little bit more in the cannabis industry, especially when it comes to regulations being made around packaging and types of allowed materials. Specifically, like I know there was one hearing, it was a post by Brett Poffenbarger a couple of years ago. I think it was a Florida case, and they were debating whether or not to have gummies or like soft chews or something as part of an edibles model. And people were pushing back against it a lot, saying it would like appeal to kids too much. But then you have the kids who, you know, are experiencing Dravet syndrome or are experiencing some sort of conditions that require these large amounts of cannabinoids as treatment. And they're not going to want to just take RSO under their tongue or with a cracker all day. They're, they would much rather prefer a good tasting, sugary little chewy treat, you know? And that's,
Hmm.
I think that's something to consider is that just youth involvement in the industry as a whole. Like when I first came up to the university, I wasn't able to go to any events or even try to get an internship in a cannabis business because I had to be 21. And so I really leveraged the virtual network to get more involved in the virtual events. And thankfully, there were a lot more at the time because it was like just a year and a half out of COVID. So we
Hmm.
were all kind of still used to doing everything online. But yeah, I guess to answer the question is just more youth representation and voice in the industry as a whole.
Hmm. I don't blame you. That is, I mean, you are the future, so hearing your voice wouldn't be a bad idea. So
Right.
I quite agree.
And I think
And
people could stand up for it a little bit more too, because we obviously have a larger acceptance for cannabis products as a whole within our generation. And so I think if we get more vocal about that, especially to legislators, they're gonna, I mean, hopefully start leaning in the right direction of what their constituents are wanting.
well, okay, and this is a little off topic, but I'm going to do it anyway. How would you, as the youth generation, appeal to the legislators who are older people?
Yeah,
How would you explain it to them that they could understand?
I think just letting them know that there's been more research done on cannabis than most of the pharmaceutical drugs available right now. And like showing that, you know, John Hopkins, for example, is launching a course on psychedelic medicine, and we still have all psychedelics listed as Schedule 1 substances right now with no medical value. So, like, the legislation is falling behind, and as the younger generation, to appeal to them, I think, is to show them that we are going to keep pushing for this no matter what. And like we're gonna change it whether they're gonna change it while they're in office or after. And I think I think Mitch McConnell made a big mistake in trying to reverse the hemp loophole and people aren't really viewing him as a good guy from the cannabis side, but then also from just general populations that are seeking cannabinoids for medical treatment in states that are illegal, those people are the ones that need to get vocal about it and say, I'm being affected by this, and this is how, like, you are providing an inequity for my population. And so kind of showing that as a role of advocacy, but pushing for change, really, and just continue showing them that you're going to continue pushing for change and continue showing up and really keep calling them, keep emailing them, they're gonna recognize your name if you keep calling and emailing enough. And, who's to say that they're gonna actually lean into our wants and desires? But if you come with actionable items with evidence-based policy and science, I don't think there's much to argue against personally, other than opinions.
Well, and that's rather the point of my question. How would you appeal to a generation that was trained literally that marijuana was the bad guy?
Asking questions. I think this was something I mentioned on the Global Commission on Drug Policy's private meeting at the DPA conferences. The youth don't giving the youth at the table doesn't mean that they have to make a statement, like we don't have to always come with facts, but rather just ask questions and like learn from each other. Like I understand why people have stigmatized views towards cannabis and psychedelics because it's like you said, it's been trained, they've been molded to that mindset. But when it comes to other generations that are, or well, not other generations, excuse me, other people who aren't studying the cannabis plant constantly, they might not understand why there is such a stigma towards it. And, especially if they are receiving medical benefit and now it might be taken away from them, so I think asking questions to see why and then explaining and just moving forward with a conversation of like we're on different sides on this very polarized spectrum, but there isn't evidence-based science around one of the sides. Like there has been very manipulative science around one of the sides, and a lot of it's been disproven too. So I think the more conversations that are had, the more, you know, I guess revelations or eye-opening kind of moments I would hope gets had. And I know I've personally seen a couple just people who were against cannabis lean into the idea of just acceptance for the reason that people aren't able to get access in those illegal states. Like it just
Mhm.
doesn't make sense to me.
That's powerful. It's always fascinating to see how passion and purpose align. So
Yeah.
let's shift gears a little and talk about you, the person behind the work, starting with your body. Uh, so, do you follow any fitness or wellness routines that help you stay grounded?
I try to hit the gym like every week, at least 2 or 3 times a week. I like to sauna a lot. I like to be in the sauna with sweatshirt and sweatpants, which a lot of people are like, "Ooh, that doesn't sound appealing." But I just like being in my own little like warm blanket in there, I guess. And yeah, I'll be in there for
Well,
like
it
40 minutes.
sure puts a different spin on a wet t-shirt contest.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Oh, all righty. Well, hey, if it works, it works. So, how do you manage stress or decompress after a long day?
That's a good question. I think really just like the routine of starting and ending my day has always kept me like within cycle. So just like going and brushing my teeth, flossing, mouthwash, wash my face, and then just like clipping my nails or like one extra personal care thing per like morning and night. So like the morning is more just like to start the day off with a routine that I'm familiar with, and then the ending the day with the same routine is really just like closing the door that I opened.
Mm-hmm. No, fair enough. Let's see. Have you noticed how taking care of your body impacts your leadership or decision making?
Yeah, that is something I've noticed actually. I think the more that I go to the gym, the more just drive that I have overall. I thought it was the opposite at first where I would get a little bit tired or sore, but then when I was like I would still be sitting down and just doing work on the computer and communicating with people online. So I think my work ethic overall just kind of improves.
Hmm. Excellent. Excellent. It's amazing how much clarity comes from taking care of the physical side. Now let's
Right.
talk about something deeper, your sense of being. So let's see. What gives you that sense of purpose in your work?
Yeah, that's a really good question too. I think it kind of falls back to the roots of where I had started, which was like I know right now that I would still be in prison if I didn't have money for a lawyer and wasn't, you know, gifted by the system. I mean, like I was really given a gift by the system, and a lot of people are not that fortunate. And I think that's something that really gives me purpose is knowing that this is my second chance and I have to make the most of it because a lot of other people don't get that second chance.
It's very true, especially with our judicial system the way it is. Okay. So, do you have any daily practices like meditation, journaling, or prayer that help keep you centered?
I like to do like 10 minutes of yoga roughly every night. I have this app called Bend, and it just will remind me at like 11 p.m., oh, time to bend. And then whenever I'm feeling sore that day, I'll just like do a quick 10-15 minute routine with it.
Hmm. So, do you do Bikram or Vinyasa?
That I am not as familiar with. I click on whatever sore is on the app, and then it just puts
Oh,
me
okay.
through a series of stretches.
Oh, fair enough. Well, like I said, yoga has different types, so figured I'd ask. All righty. So, has your spirituality or philosophy helped shape the way you lead your team or community?
That's a really good question. Um, I think my sense of spirituality is very community driven and karma driven to where it's like you give what you get and your energy is reciprocated. So the way that I like to put energy into my team is very much like positive and motivating and um I also like really direct. I like to be direct, and if there is something that needs to be said like negatively, it's direct, and I tell them before I say it, like this is out of love. I just want to be honest. And then like that kind of prefaces that I might say something that is a little uncomfortable for them, but they know that I'm doing it with the intent of trying to improve whatever is wrong or whatever is inefficient, really.
Excellent. Okay. Purpose really fuels everything. I love that. And of
Mhm.
course, that purpose also shows up in how we connect with people we love, which brings us to balance. So, how do you balance work and personal life in such a demanding industry?
That's a really good question too. I think it's really hard. I started to actually like schedule out times that I'm hanging out or calling with people, which was
Hmm.
really weird at first because I would like my mom or dad would call me to catch up randomly, and most of the time I'd be busy with school or projects or work or something. And so I realized that I just needed to put them on the schedule. And so I told them, I was like, listen, I need roughly like 24-hour no notice of you so that I can fit you into my schedule and can guarantee like 30 to 40 minutes of time with my attention directly on you and like having the conversation. And so with that, it kind of builded from that or built from that and started doing it with my brothers and my grandparents. And then now I will do it with friends. And I'm just be like,
Hmm.
okay, I have to work on this and I have to read during this time. And I'm only able to hang out or really like I'm not busy. That's the best way to put it. I'm not busy between this time and this time if you're available on Tuesday. And
Hmm.
it's kind of like scheduling a date almost, but with your friends. So,
Yes. Well, when you're doing schoolwork, you have to focus your time on it. because that's
Yep.
what you're there for. So I get that. I went through my bachelor's and my master's, so I get it. And when it comes to the work, it has to be priority. And it's
Mhm.
even more so when you're far away from home.
Right.
Because last I checked, you're out of state, right?
Yep. So I'm originally from Minnesota, and then I'm going to school in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
Yep. So you're far away from home. You need
Yeah,
time
it's
to focus. And
yeah,
yeah, you got to schedule your time. That's how it goes.
right.
All righty. So, what? Uh, Wrong question. Has there been a time you lost balance, and how did you bring it back?
Yeah, I think one thing that threw me off in my initial years was really attending MJ BizCon the first time was very overwhelming, and it threw me off because it made my sense of purpose more minuscule than a lot of the other people there. And it made me feel like um really that I was stepping into other people's industry and that I didn't have a place. And so
Mm-hmm.
the way that I kind of combated that was, well, I went home for winter break, so I kind of just thought about all that and decided what the best way to move forward was from there. But I started to just reach out to people on LinkedIn and call them and, or well, request an intro call and then get on a call and see really what they do in the industry and see where I might be able to fit. And then from there, I realized that the calling was just networking at scale because I was able to book multiple calls a week. And then um, I just kind of started to get more resources for our club and our university that way. And then, yeah, I realized that you don't have to, you don't have to, what's the best way to put it? You can become part of the industry by involving yourself in the community and by connecting with the community. Because, I mean, the industry has a bunch of different communities, which is nice, but overall, everyone mostly knows everyone, or well, not knows, but knows of, or has heard of, or is familiar with. And so, if you are able to just keep connecting with people and keep talking with people, you start to find your place there. And then you start to find your own community within the industry. And I've realized that that's probably going to help me find a job after college, is that network that I've created.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Networking is an essential part. I learned that the hard way. All right. I appreciate your honesty. It's a reminder that leadership starts at home. Now, let's bring it full circle and talk about business, where your vision is headed next, so to speak. So, what are your biggest goals for the next 5 years?
Yeah, I would really like to launch a product or a business at some point in the next 5 years. My business partner and I were working on different software for AI integrations into security and inventory management. And then I had also been looking into hemp drinks, and obviously there's a big pushback on that right now. So that kind of messed up plans. But I think one of my biggest goals in the next 5 years is to be out of debt, out of college debt. Hopefully, probably not, but hopefully. And
Mm-hmm.
then I would like to be in a management level position in some facility if I haven't launched my own company or um, product. I would really enjoy being in a C-suite level and just kind of giving further direction towards a company's vision.
Well said. But I will advise, and this is just me being an older guy, it takes time to be sea level. I can tell you that from personal experience. So don't rush into things so quick. And just a tip, if you want to look into a good software niche, software accounting. And I'll
Okay.
tell you why. Because cannabis has complex accounting systems. Literally, the IRS requires one type of accounting versus another. And basically, there are literally no software available for that. And one that does not integrate with like Metric or MJ Freeway for inventory management. So, inventory management is okay, but my advice, focus on the accounting because that way it gives growers, it gives retailers, it gives them a chance to be able to do their not so much their own accounting as so much as to have accounting software that works.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people use QuickBooks, and QuickBooks is not always so cannabis friendly. I hate to say it, but it's true.
Yeah, and
So,
everyone in the supply chain needs accounting too. It's not specific to um any direct point.
mm-hmm, exactly. So, if you want to do a software, go try that because there is a demand for that. I can tell you that.
Good
And
idea.
that's I'm not just saying because it's my field, but being in the field for 13 years, yeah, there is a demand for that.
Yeah.
So that's the main thing. All right. Next question. And that's my soapbox for today. Next question. What do you see as the biggest opportunities in cannabis today?
That's a good question. I think, I would have said hemp normalization is gonna lead to the segue of the cannabis normalization, and we might get low dose cannabis edibles in the same segment as the low dose hemp edibles, but because of the restrictions, I would say probably not. Um, Man, I think the biggest opportunities right now are they're going to be in the states that are just launching. Um, I think partnering with existing brands is a really key point to start in those existing states. I know, um, I mean, as long as you're using their systems, then you're in a little bit better position than the competition, at least from the get-go. Um, But I think Minnesota is going to be a really good just opportunity state overall, and I think that they have a very interesting model set up where the tribes in the state have no production limits, but everyone
Mm-hmm.
else in the state does. So I'm curious to see how that goes. Um, but yeah, I think the biggest opportunity right now is build a brand, because interstate commerce is going to get shut down again, and then that's going to put everyone a step back. So the best thing you can do is build a brand, whether it be in your small community or expanding that community into other communities via white label production, but get on shelves and get noticed.
Mm-hmm. That's very good and very true. As I understand it, the Native American tribes are starting to get into the cannabis industry, and they work out great because they're their own people, their own government,
Yeah.
and they don't answer to the U.S. government, so they can do what they want.
I know that a few of the tribes are struggling here in Michigan, but one of them actually just signed a compact agreement with the Cannabis Regulatory Agency here to allow for their product to be sold in the metric regulated market to other dispensaries. So that'll give
Nice.
them a little bit better um, I don't know if leg up is the right word because Michigan is really going down more than anything, but it'll give them better opportunity to, you know, compete.
True. Very true. Yeah, that 24% tax is really killing Michigan. I've talked to other people who are in your state and they're not happy about it. And I
Yeah,
can't
no,
blame them because it's a huge tax and they're trying to keep their prices down.
right. That's about 5 weeks out from implementation, and I know the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association is suing the state regarding that tax. They actually, one of the courts heard oral arguments from them today. That was about 2 hours long. And I know that's on the Michigan Cannapro's Facebook, but I actually have it in my external browser. So I was planning on listening to that after this.
I don't blame you. That's a good thing to listen to, especially when they're arguing the merits of the law.
Right.
So, next question though. When people look back at your impact years from now, what do you hope they remember you for?
So, like in my work at the university or in just the industry overall?
The industry overall.
Okay. Well, I think I would really like to, I think I would like people to remember me as someone who just has an extreme amount of drive and passion and someone who is not only trying to connect the right dots for myself and the students within the program here, but also um, just someone that likes connecting with people overall and tries to help people in ways that make sense for them, I guess. And
Hmm.
I think I like talking to people at conferences to try and figure out what their needs are, even if I can't fill it, because I I mean, you talk to so many people at these conferences that theoretically you can just connect the dots for them. And um,
Hmm.
one tip I have for conference goers, since we'll be at MJ BizCon next week, is take notes on business cards. Like I always bring a Sharpie and a pen, or well, I'll bring two Sharpies. I do gray and black because some people have black business cards and the black doesn't show up well. But so
Hmm.
the Sharpies and pens, and then I'll make like quick bullet points on the discussion topics or how mm, they could benefit someone else, what needs they have, and how, or like if they have any resources for the university, I usually make a quick note on that. But um, yeah, that was kind of a side tangent, but I use that to help
Okay,
connect people and also bring resources for others.
perfect. And that's inspiring. It's clear you're leading with both purpose and heart. So, okay, thank you, Jackson Run, for joining us and sharing your story. It's incredible to see how aligned you are embodied being balance in business. That's what true leadership looks like. For everyone listening, make sure to follow Jackson Rund and his work in cannabis to keep up with their journey. And as always, thanks for tuning into the CEO podcast, where we help cannabis CEOs increase cash flow, boost profits, and save thousands on taxes because most bookkeepers won't. Get your free cash flow and tax leak audit at luxfinancials.org today. All right. Thank you much.